What's up, everybody? Welcome to part 2 of the Coil Shock on the Stumpjumper EVO video series. Today's video, we're going to actually ride this bike on the trails up here on Galbraith and see how this feels, get some real-world experience. And yeah, I'm also going to kind of go through the general adjustment procedure that I do, just so you can see how I do it. Now, everyone's going to be a little bit different, but this is just the way that makes sense with my brain up here. So take that with a grain of salt. Just one guy on the internet screwing around with expensive toys. So before we go on the trail, we're going to answer some questions and just reply to some comments that we saw a lot of people kind of frequently bring up in the comments of part 1, where I was just installing it on my bike and calculating the spring. So I can't read those. So Tor behind the camera is going to do that. So Tor, what's the first question here?
All right, Mike, our first question is from Joe McCann. He says, Mike talks about 50-pound increments for rock shocks. Is it possible to use springs from other manufacturers, assuming it's the right size?
Yeah, you can use other springs on other brands of shocks. Like, you can mix and match, as long as the inner diameter of the spring is compatible with the actual shock itself, because it needs to sit on the, the clip or the perch at the top and the bottom of the shock. So yeah, you just got to know the inner diameter. And in regards to rock shocks is a little tricky because the spring size that they use is pretty big compared to other brands. There's not a ton of options out there. You can't put Fox springs on rock shocks because they're just too small. So for rock shocks, you got to use rock shocks, which only comes in 50-pound increments, or the Sprindex springs have adapters. Hey, buddy. Yeah, cute dog. Sprindex springs have adapters for rock shocks. So there's probably some other ones out there that I'm missing off the top of my head. I think Super Alloy Racing might make one that fits on rock shocks, and I think either Push and or EXT works. I can't remember, but just check with the manufacturer. What's the next question?
This one's from Stefan Lutenberg. Really nice video. Thank you, Stefan. It's very nice of you. I'm wondering about the reference list at 241 as the 2020 EVO TLD Limited was equipped with a Fox DHX2 Performance Elite.
Yeah, absolutely. So you will notice that one model of the previous generation of Stumpjumper EVO did come with a coil shock on it, and worth mentioning before we even get into that. So I have a model year 2023 Stumpjumper EVO. So the information given in part 1, part 2, and part 3 of this whole series has to do with the current generation of Stumpjumper EVO during this time of filming, which is model year 2021 and newer. There was a previous generation up until model year 2020, and they did have a special edition, which was like the Pemberton edition, came with a Fox DHX2 coil shock. You will then see that was quickly pretty much just pulled because the DHX2 would break on these bikes, just because the eyelet to stanchion design just could not hold up to the side load of the specific frame design, and so they would break. But yeah, that's why you'll see this. And yeah, that previous generation of Stumpjumper EVO, the kinematics and suspension design was a little bit different, so all the information from this video series is not going to directly relate to that.
We got one more question from Brian Vick here. Would be interested to see you throw the Cascade link on there and see if you notice the progression or travel increase.
Okay, so I have seen this one a lot. We will try out a Cascade link on this bike. I don't like to change too much at once. I don't want to change like the link and the shock all at once. I want to kind of get the shock dialed in right off the bat with the stock link, just to see how it performs, because this video series is mainly informational for people with the Stumpjumper EVO. Not everybody is going to want to go out and spend a couple $100 on the Cascade link, and they just kind of want to ride it with the stock link, how it was designed from Specialized, and they don't really want the extra travel and extra progression necessarily, because they don't want to spend the money on it, which is more than fair. So this video series, just putting it on with the stock link. But yeah, maybe I'll try out the Cascade link, because I know that that's popular, and see how that works. So maybe we'll do a part 4, a little bonus video, because I would like to see how that works out, just because a lot of our customers have been doing this combination of that link and some other aftermarket shock. So it'll be good to see how that works. All right, now last but not least, there were a lot of comments about like the shock, it's gonna break on my bike, which is definitely something to be concerned about or keep an eye on, because as I mentioned in the first part, I'm not sure if some of you viewers just didn't make it far enough in the video, but a couple minutes in, I put up a chart on the screen of all of the shock models from different manufacturers that are considered to be quote unquote approved for this bike platform, and their design just looks to hold up with this shock that is held on with a, you know, clevis, strut, shock extension link, whatever you want to call it. So this is all just the manufacturer spec, so I'm not just like, you know, pulling a random shocks out of my hat and popping them on here. Like, you know, we did look into it. I called all the manufacturers to make sure that they are approved to work with this bike. So yeah, so with that said, this video series is just meant to be informational. So if you are putting on one of these approved shocks, how it rides, how it feels, and if it's a good call for you and how you ride. So with that said, we're pulling up to the trailhead now. I'll gear up, hit the trails, and see how it feels. Let's go. All right, I actually got antsy and went for a bike ride last night with this new Coil shock setup, and I just wanted to get some initial feelings on it, so I wasn't just turning the camera on and didn't know what to talk about, where to start. So first off, let's talk about climbing. Well, we are on our way up to the top of Galbraith. Gonna go ride SST, riding the Ridge Trail right now, and I gotta say, Coil shock. Don't really think about it making a bike climb better, and I don't think that it really overall makes the bike climb better from like an overall standpoint, but I do feel like it has more traction through really weird, rooty stuff, and the trails dried out a bit overnight, but this section up here last night was really wet, and it was pretty tricky, but let's just kind of climb over some of these rocks, do some awkward stuff here. And while you're putting power into the pedals, I feel like that little bit of extra traction that a Coil shock gives you makes you, yeah, just kind of power through tricky, wet, rooty stuff a little bit better, just because your rear wheel is glued to the ground a little bit more with that more sensitive Coil shock, and overall helps you get better traction. Kind of aids at avoiding just spinning out when you're putting power to the ground through tricky climbs. So that's the first thing that I noticed. Now, obviously, Coil shock's gonna add about a pound of weight, but in this specific case, I don't know if I really feel it overall. I would say the actual pros outweigh the cons in regards to climbs and adding the weight, but getting better traction. So far, I really like that. For the settings last night, I kind of just left them where they were for when these were on Steve's bike, who was riding this last. And low speed compression right in the middle of the 5 positions. The high speed compression was -1 out of 5. And the hydraulic bottom out was at the +2 point, so it was pretty stiff on the hydraulic bottom out setting. So I'm really excited to get to the top of this climb, which is going to take about 30 minutes or so, and ride down and see how it feels now, because I've done 2 things. I've reduced the high speed compression. I've actually turned it fully soft just because I want to see what it feels like when this thing is fully soft and fully active on every bump. And then 2, I set the hydraulic bottom out control to the softest mode as well, because again, I just want to see what it feels like. I want to see what it feels like when the shock is as soft as it can get, and also has the least amount of that hydraulic bottom out control. And that's one of the really cool features of this Super Deluxe Ultimate Coil, is the adjustable hydraulic bottom out control, which is not found on many shocks. The ones that it is found on are very expensive. Another thing to note with the Coil shock, when you're climbing or just pedaling in general, there's just that much extra sensitivity from the coil that actually makes the pedal bob a little bit worse when you're literally just comparing pedal bob versus pedal bob. So adding some low speed compression to that adjustment, definitely something that is pretty valuable. And right now I think I've got it fully open, but again, just to see what it feels like as I test this out. But okay, again, I'm just doing the extremities. So I'm trying it fully open. Now I'm trying it fully closed with the most added low speed compression. Again, just to see how it feels. And everyone's gonna have a different process when they're setting up their new shock. This is my process. I like to try the extremities of the range and the sweep of the adjustment. So, except for rebound, kind of get the rebound set to match my fork, assuming my fork is set up right, which it is because I've been riding this fully set up for several weeks. So match the rebound to my fork to make the bike feel balanced front and rear so that it can rebound and spring back in a balanced manner. But when it comes to the compression, I like to see what it feels like fully open first. Now everyone's gonna be different. This is my preference, but maybe I just watched too many monster trucks as a kid or something. But when I get new suspension, I wanna see what it feels like when it's full soft and just super, super plush, just to see how it feels. And then, depending on the product and the type of adjustments that it has, I will go to, again, the far extreme to see how it feels when it's full firm. This also helps on other brands of suspension that have more clicks and more adjustments where, unlike RockShox, you can't really feel the difference that every single click makes. And so it's nice to try that full range of the extremities, see how full open, full firm feel, and then that'll get you a better idea of what it's gonna feel like in the middle when you're moving forward with your fine tuning and initial setup of your new suspension. Again, that's just how I like to do it, but there are 5,000 ways to do it, so. All right, dropping in, hydraulic bottom out, all the way open, high speed compression, full soft. I wanna see how this thing bottoms out. Woo! This gosh dang Stumpjumper is a pretty fast bike. I haven't had a full 29er in a while, and this coil shock definitely makes it behave a little bit different on the descents. Sorry if there's water on the lens. 0% chance of rain in the forecast today. And of course in Bellingham, it's raining. Woo! All right, let's just drop into this lower part here. So far it feels good. Like I hit that jump pretty far, landed a little flat, felt good. Ah! I'm gonna be riding like a little bit of an idiot right now because I just want to see how this thing feels when I like get into some dicey situations. All right, I mean, I'm pushing into it pretty hard in the back and it doesn't feel like it's bottoming out like crazy. Woo! I love this little section. One thing this coil shock does, definitely like, once I got the rebound set up to where I like it, it kind of like calms the bike down. It makes it feel a little bit more composed. Now, I feel like I have to run the rebound slightly slower on this coil shock because it's so much more active, because it's so much more sensitive. It moves more because of its sensitivity. And when I had the rebound set a little higher, it felt like it was a little all over the place, but just a click or two slower on from my initial setup, it feels awesome. So now I'm gonna come up to this drop here on SST, which everyone's probably seen in videos a million times. Feels good, man. Okay, now let's push this thing into some corners. Gosh. I definitely feel like I'm going a little farther here and there. The dirt is really good right now too. I definitely have solid traction when it comes to corners and everything, and man, this thing feels good. I did not expect it to feel this good. Woo! With basically little to no compression, no hydraulic bottom out. I'm gonna take a break here for a second. Okay, let's see. So, low speed compression is right in the middle setting. And it feels good. It feels really good. High speed compression, fully open. Hydraulic bottom out, fully open. I did not expect this bike to feel so supportive and just overall great with coil shock. Riding it with the air shock with the hydraulic bottom out, I feel like I actually feel the bottom out more, and the hydraulic bottom out is not adjustable on the RockShox Super Deluxe Air shock. So I don't really understand. So let's keep riding because I hear some people coming. I don't want to hold anybody up. All right, here's some ripping corners. I really want to see if I can push through. Great sound effects, Mike. Woo. All right. This jump's always a little weird because it's wet. Oh man, it feels so good. Totally not related to the shock, but I've got the SRAM transmission. On this bike, I got XX, and every time I've got to throw in pedal stroke, completely pedaling under load, it shifts so good. I can 100% shift and pedal harder on descents, which is amazing because drivetrains are usually optimized for climbing, not necessarily the descending part, which is really cool. So I'm gonna try something here, and I'm gonna do some extremities just because I'm interested. Does this make sense for most people in the way they set up their suspension? Probably not, but I'm going to go right to the middle and then +2 on the hydraulic bottom out, so fully maxed out. And then I'm gonna try adding some high-speed compression. All right, all the high-speed compression, all of the hydraulic bottom out. And I feel like I'm gonna very quickly be able to feel how this feels on this bottom section because it's pretty fast and rough. Not right away, but let's just do a little, oh my gosh. Let's just over jump some stuff and land really hard on this uphill. Okay, now we got a little pedal section. Okay, so now this next section of trail right here, it's really fast and kind of swervy, and then there's some little jumps periodically, and so I'm just gonna overshoot them and kind of land a flat, really heavy on my front wheel so I can land hard on my back wheel, and see how this extra high-speed compression and bottom out control works. So we got pedals and pump, and let's get it going. Okay. That feels good. Oh my God. Yeah. Man, high-speed compression makes the bike feel even more composed. That just feels downright good. I feel like the bike is more balanced and controlled, as it should, with some more compression. Still have the low speed in the middle setting. It feels just good like that. All right, take a break to reflect. Just hitting little things like that, where you kind of jump through the trees and land in some chunky stuff. Obviously, more high-speed compression will slow the shock down. And its stroke when you're doing a high-speed compression, which is a hard bottom out or really high-speed hit when you smack into, you know, a rock or something like that. But without the high-speed compression, you know, when it was fully open, it felt like it was more active and moving around. It felt like the bike had more travel since it could use the travel easier. But with the high-speed compression added and the hydraulic bottom out, it felt like the bike had less travel because it could use less travel because the high-speed compression circuit wasn't firming up the shock under high-speed hits and high-speed impacts. But the hydraulic bottom out control also made it feel like it had less travel because it, you know, when it hits that bottom of the travel, it's very soft. So I guess like that last few millimeters of stroke are not as soft, but you know, think about it. You got this much stroke, you got 55 millimeters of stroke, and you're using, you know, 80% of it, a lot, you know, but you're not using that last little bit all the time. So when you do get down into that further part of the shock stroke and, you know, under compression events, it just feels a lot more softer and just more comfortable. You know, nobody wants a really hard bottom out because it's just uncomfortable. But man, this 400-pound spring at yeah, basically 28% sag, I mean, it feels really good. I do not see any reason why I would change the spring to go to anything firmer or softer. I definitely like to run around 28 to 32% sag. You know, you can only get so close with the coil spring, coil shock setup, but that's where I like it, and I think I'm overall happy. So let's head back to the shop. Just got a little quick traverse to do. Get back to the car, head back to the shop, and talk a little bit more about how I feel about this. Be sure to subscribe to our channel with notifications turned on so that you don't miss part 3, where I fully review how this bike feels with the coil shock and help you decide if this is the right move for you and how you ride. I'll also post up part 1 on the screen right here and also link it in the description. If you'd like to purchase a shock or any other parts to upgrade or service your Stumpy EVO or any other bike, head over to our website at thelostco.com, where we have a massive catalog of goodies for your bike. If you have any questions, hit us up with a call or email and we'll be happy to help. I'll see you over at part 2.